The animation opens inside the woods, where a queen and her daughter play hide and seek. The queen's name is Elinor and her daughter, the princess' name, is Merida. Some moments later, the king arrives and gives his daughter a bow, which they both practice while the queen watches. Merida shoots an arrow far into the forest, and she runs off to go retrieve it. She searches through the forest for some time and sees the arrow stuck in a tree, so she removes it. Merida hears some sounds in the forest. She looks around and sees some wisps, which she follows. While following the creatures, she hears her parents call out to her, so she runs out of the forest and informs them of what she saw. They all prepare to leave back to the castle when a big black bear appears and tries to attack Merida and her mother. The king comes to their rescue as he draws out his weapon to fight off the animal, while the queen takes her child on the horse and flees the scene. Years later, Merida grows into a beautiful young princess and becomes an elder sister to playful triplet boys within these years. Her mother teaches her everything she needs to know as a princess, ranging from history to royal etiquette and manners. And although her mother does all that she can to teach her daughter, the princess sees all these lessons as burdens. Merida's hobbies turned out to be archery, which she takes out time to practice inside the forest from time to time. She returns from her archery practice one day and goes to have breakfast with her family. At the table, her parents announce her upcoming betrothal ceremony to her. This news comes as a surprise to Merida, and she isn't happy about it. She tries to make her mother change her decision, but it is futile, so she angrily walks away from the table. The queen goes to meet Merida in her room, and she listens to her daughter as she complains that she isn't ready for marriage. Merida's mother then tells her a story of an ancient kingdom that was destroyed due to the greed and selfishness of one of the princes. She then tells her daughter to come to complete terms with the aspect of marriage. Then she leaves her room while Merida shuts the doors angrily behind her. The day of the ceremony reaches and Merida's suitors arrive in their different boats to the castle. The queen dresses Merida up preparing for the ceremony, and the entire castle is prepared to welcome the guests. The clans arrive at the castle, where they all gather in the hall to present their suitors. After a while, a fight breaks out between the clans, and the entire hall is in pandemonium. Queen Elinor restores order to the hall and announces that each of the firstborn sons of the clan heads would compete for Merida's hand in marriage. Merida, on the other hand, specifies that her suitors would compete in the game of archery. So, the clowns all head out into the field, and they carry out different activities. The time for archery soon comes, and the suitors are handed their bows and arrows. The suitors shoot their arrows, but none of them hit the bullseye perfectly. Merida soon goes out from where she sits with her parents and arrives at the field, where she announces to everyone's shock that she would compete for her hand in marriage. Her mother steps out from her seat and forbids her from doing so, but Merida shoots her arrow at the different boards, hitting the bullseye perfectly. The queen angrily grabs her into the room and scolds her for what she just did. They both get into a heated argument, which leads to Merida angrily cutting their family's banner. This gets her mother furious, and she takes her daughter's bow and flings it into the fire, getting her daughter heartbroken as she leaves the room. Merida sheds tears as she rides into the forest with her horse. They arrive at a place where her horse is afraid to go further, so he throws her to the ground. Merida sees some in the forest, so she convinces her horse to come with her. She follows the track on which the wisps lay for her, and she soon arrives at an old cottage. Merida enters this building and sees an old woman who she later finds out to be a witch. The princess then asks this witch to grant her request to change her mother to the queen, so she would stop talking about marriage to her. This witch agrees and mixes some potions in her pot which produce a cake. The old woman instructs Merida to give the cake to her mother to eat, after which she would change. So, Merida steps out of the cottage, which disappears as soon as she leaves. She arrives at the castle and goes into the kitchen to make some tea to serve the cake with. Her mom meets her inside the kitchen and is curious about where she went and why she made her a cake. Merida then feeds her mother a slice of the cake, which immediately makes the queen nauseous as soon as she eats it. So, she asks her daughter to take her to her room as she was already feeling dizzy. Merida takes her mother to her room, and they pass the hall of guests where the clans and the suitors wait for the princess to make her choice. She successfully takes her mom to her room and lays her on the bed, but she tumbles over and gets up, transforming into a bear. Merida sees that her mom has changed into a bear, and she screams in fear, so her mother looks into a mirror and is appalled by what she sees. She roars at Merida, who tries to explain everything that had conspired between her and the witch. In the hall, the king hears the roar and tells the men to follow him as they go to look for the bear. While inside the room, Merida thinks of a way to get her mother out of the castle without the king seeing her. She later goes to meet her brothers to ask them to assist her in helping their mother, who is now Bear. They agree, and the triplets divert the attention of the king and the other clans while Merida sneaks her mother out of the castle. The triplets then go into the kitchen and ignorantly eat the remainder of the witch's cake. Merida takes her mother into the forest as they go to look for the witch to reverse the spell. She searches the forest for some time and finally sees the cottage, so she goes inside. The cottage is empty at first, but later, the witch's cauldron appears, showing the witch, who informs Merida that her mother's spell would be permanent after 2 days. She then tells the princess that to break the spell, she would have to mend the bond which was broken by pride. They leave the cottage and make a shed in the forest, where they spend the night as it starts to rain. In the morning, Merida and her mother head to the stream to get what to eat for breakfast. She shoots a fish with her arrow, which she roasts and serves to her mom. After which, they both go into the stream to catch more fish, and they have fun as they do so. Later, the queen leaves the water to go inside the bush and Merida goes after her. She tries to attack her daughter when she touches her, and this makes Merida realize that the spell is gradually becoming permanent. The queen gets back herself and they both see some wisps who lead them to an ancient and abandoned castle. Eleanor falls into the building, looks around it, and realizes that the castle belongs to the ancient kingdom which her mother told her about. Suddenly, a ferocious bear comes out of the shadows and attacks Merida. She tries her best to run away from it, then she leaps to the roof, where her mother catches her and puts her on her back as they run away from the bear. While running, they lose their balance and fall, after which they realize that they are back in the forest, and the castle is nowhere to be found. They get up from the ground and Merida informs her mother that they need to go back to their home to mend their family's banner, so she goes back to being a human. The queen is scared at first but later agrees to go back to the castle with Merida. They sneak into the castle but realize that they would need to walk past the clans that are already fighting each other. So, they come up with a plan and Merida walks up to the men while her mother carefully ascends the stairs. Merida makes a speech to the assembly of clans, stating that they should live in peace as they used to, and also announcing that she is breaking the betrothal tradition. This announcement shocks the clan heads, but their sons agree to it, mentioning that they should be free to choose who they want to marry. After the compromise has been achieved, the men all leave the hall to the king's cellar to drink and marry. Merida takes her mother to her room and they both look for needles and thread to be able to mend the family's banner. While they do this, the queen suddenly transforms and becomes wild again, trying to attack her daughter. Outside, in the corridor, the king happily goes to his wife's room to tell her the good news of what Merida did. He gets into her room and sees her dress torn on the floor and her room completely scattered. So, the king gets heartbroken as he concludes that his wife has been devoured by a bear. He gets up and enters Merida's room to check on her and sees the bear inside her room. He takes his daughter aside and begins to fight the bear, who throws him across the floor. The queen regains her consciousness and sees everything that just happened, so she gets terrified and runs away from the castle. Merida tries to tell her father that the bear is his wife, but he does not listen to her and locks her inside the room, so she wouldn't come out. He then assembles all the clans that are in the castle, and they go into the forest with their horses and dogs to look for the bear. Merida does all that she can to unlock the door and head out of the room, but it's all futile. She then looks out and sees her 3 brothers, who have already transformed into little bears. She instructs her brothers to retrieve the room's key from the housekeeper, which they do, and Merida comes out of the room. Furthermore, she takes the torn banner and hops on her horse with her brothers as they go into the forest to stop their father. Inside the forest, the queen is chased by the king and his men, with arrows being shot at her and dogs hot on her trail. She runs for her life, but she stumbles and her attackers all surround her with their weapons. They capture her and tie her to the ground with their ropes. The king comes down from his horse and brings out his sword to kill the bear, but Merida appears from behind and shoots away his sword. She runs towards her mother to protect her and fights off her father as she explains that the bear is his wife. The king falls to the ground and is surrounded by his sons, who are now little bears. He tries to understand what is happening but is interrupted by the arrival of Mordu, the ferocious bear. The men attack the bear and try to fight it off, but it is too strong for them. Merida shoots arrows at the wild animal, but it does not affect it as it goes after her to attack her. Merida is held down by Mordu and it roars at her, but her mother comes to her rescue. The queen breaks herself free from the ropes and goes to fight off Mordu. She rescues her daughter and a fierce battle breaks out between the two bears. Mordu is stronger than the queen, so he beats her severely, but she does not back down from the fight. She gets up and pushes him to a rock several times as it gradually cracks. Mordu flings her to the ground as she does this and tries to attack her again, but the rock falls heavily on it and it dies. Merida is excited that her mother did not lose the fight but suddenly notices that the sun is coming out to mark it the second day of the spell. So, she hurriedly grabs the family's banner which she had sewn back together and covers her mother with it as the sun draws closer to their direction. But instead of her mom returning to normal, she transforms completely into a bear, and Merida is heartbroken. She goes to hug her mother as she breaks down in tears and apologizes for everything she had done. The sun then completely comes out and Merida feels her mother's hands on her head, so she looks up and sees that the queen has returned to being human. The triplets also return to normal as the spell gradually breaks. The entire family holds themselves in a warm embrace and they head back home. At the town, the different clans return to their various kindred but this time have peace within their midst. Merida and her mother, on the other hand, ride horses and go on adventures together as their bond as mother and daughter strengthen. This is where the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe for more videos like this. See you soon with a new video. Till then, stay happy and chill out.